I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of a slow news day. I've made so many Piscatella videos, and what I'm gonna do is my goal is to make many more. However, I need to come up with creative ways to deploy the content and pretty much continue to see how it's in contrast to a lot of the narratives that are out there. So I was scrolling through Twitter, and the boy, the guy, the legend, Astro Cyborg, already has something that I think is a little juicy for us to listen to. And, this is just in passing. I know many of you, you may or may not agree with Reforger's position, but you have to understand, guys, that a lot of people hold these positions, so we have to acknowledge it, number one. And number two, we have to assess it and see if these positions, or the position that he espouses here, if it actually withstands the reality of the market and a lot of what is being channeled by others who listen or support. You get it? So, what is basically being said here? I know Astro Cyborg, he had to give it a title, but don't worry. I thought, oh, maybe this is one of those, clips that I probably won't be interested in, but this is actually very interesting. So, let's listen.
The only reason we play this stupid shell game point game with PlayStation games is because they kicked the ever-loving crap out of Xbox this gen. I mean, they demolished them. It's embarrassing. If you look at the quality of the games and the cadence of the games from PlayStation this gen and you compare, it's embarrassing.
What cadence? What cadence? I'm wondering, like, oh, you mean the release cycle of the games? Cadence? I mean, I'm kind of curious. When people say cadence, I think they're talking about like the frequency in terms of release of these video games. How many of these games have been coming out and all of this stuff. Okay. But here's something that I need to go ahead and offer as a caution is the generation is still going on. When people say things like, oh, this generation, blah, 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 like, this is where we actually have to say, no. With all due respect, it will be wise for us to wait for the generation to be completed before we see, how things already line up. Because, yes, maybe some Xbox fanboys might take a victory lap on PlayStation about the 10 live service games. I mean, that's just a preliminary, small, I don't know, laugh or whatever it is. But to say it's embarrassing and all this and the cadence and the that, it's kind of weird.
It is. You want to put up your little Metacritic chart on Twitter, you know that you're doing that because the games can't stand up to the actual comparisons.
Then what else are we going to use? Or if whoever is bringing the Metacritic chart up to you, what else are they going to basically be able to use to point out the general reception of the game? I hate Metacritic as much as the next guy. But, I mean, you can't tell somebody to go ahead and abandon it because they're trying to use it as kind of like a, hey, Xbox games are scoring an average of so and so and so. I guess, maybe, I don't know.
I'll take Returnal and Ratchet and Forbidden West and Ragnarok and Spider-Man 2, and I'll just put it on the table and be like, what do you got?
What I got is the data, and that data set tells me that these games that you've just cited, nobody bought them.
30% of people that play video games will not buy a video game this year.
Wow.
So that's a third of the audience that just won't buy. A further 18% purchase a new game every 6 months or less frequently. So these are your folks that are buying Madden or EAFC, or they're picking up Call of Duty, right? Your big mass market only kind of buyer.
When these games that you put on the table made their way to PC, their reception was mixed across the board. In fact, Ragnarok was a sequel and Spider-Man 2 was a sequel. And those games, their reception is kind of tepid because a lot of people already had time. That's the thing about these story-driven games. They already had time to be able to see and assess the stories of these games, and also by themselves have been able to decide if they were going to patronize the game at full price or not. There also have been third-party games that have been out there too. So it's not as if, there's a drought in gaming. There are just so many games out there.
What do you got? What'd your 100 billion get you?
Only the highest selling game, only the second highest selling game of the year. And also an admission of truth that Microsoft has basically leapfrogged PlayStation across its pillars. Microsoft acquisition of Activision positions it to leapfrog our current pillars. $100 billion can do that. Console shifts from PS. Subscription. Microsoft's comprehensive ecosystem, coupled with exclusivity, creates greater dominance. Yeah, that's worth $100 billion for a very aggressive PlayStation. And to me, I want PlayStation to continue to compete. Right? I'm all for PlayStation competing because I don't want Microsoft wielding dollars and eventually spending Sony out of the business, because that's what they're doing. They're tactfully doing it. They're spending them out of business. They're occupying their own territory and their own ground, knowing the truth that these folk don't buy these games. So they're pouring the games everywhere. And before you know what's going on, there's going to be a different conversation, because this so-called cadence that Reforge is citing here, it's not one that is sustainable when it comes down to the conversation. Let's keep listening to data, though, and juxtapose it with what it is that he's saying and what I'm kind of perceiving here.
The kind of purchaser that's watching this show, you're probably buying at least one game a month, maybe more. Only 12% of video game players buy a game once a month. Only 4% buy games more often than once per month. So, when we're talking about the developers and the publishers that are really being, hurt the most, that we're talking the most about, are the games that are really targeting this like 16% of total players that are, purchasing very frequently, while the mass majority of players are buying a game or two a year and they're playing Fortnite, Minecraft, and Roblox.
Also Helldivers 2, which sold more than Spider-Man 2 in light of things, probably sold more than Horizon, Forbidden West, and most definitely sold more than Ratchet and Clank. These games that you've just mentioned. Can somebody beg people to stop making these hard, fast rules about PlayStation and just realize that they are also part of a market that is, being shifted from within?
The last 5 years, what do you got? Indie and hi-fi? That's it? Indie, hi-fi, and Forza?
And Call of Duty and freaking Overwatch. I mean, you said, well, the $100 billion get Xbox. I'm just running the accounting here.
3? It's silly. The whole thing's silly. Wilds in 2 days. I mean, 2025, if you don't care about this kind of stuff and you're excited about third-party games, you're excited about second-party games, you're excited about publishing efforts, you forgot Spidey 2. I feel like I said Spidey 2.
No, I don't know if you said it or not.
Mash says, I played it at launch 6 months later, and a year later, my honest opinion at launch, 4 out of 10. 6 months later, like 5, maybe 6 out of 10. Being kind. What game are you talking about, Mash? If you like games you've been eating good. My backlog is absurd. It's absurd, especially when you play smaller titles. If you're willing to play smaller titles. You forgot Astro?
Astro didn't sell. Again, one of the crazy things is, this is, again, like I said, this is the hubris of the PlayStation fan that has existed for so many, months on my channel anyways, where I had to sit down and kind of think and say, wait, why is this gaslighting going on? And how has this gone to the point where a lot of these folk will open their mouths and say PlayStation has no games, or, Xbox has no games, or Xbox players don't buy games, and all this stuff. And then to come and realize that it's not just Xbox players that are not buying games. That the data basically shows that as much as this quality of games that they always shout and cite and sing about, that the sales are abysmal. Because a lot of these games that were just mentioned, right? Horizon Forbidden West had access to the PlayStation 4 with over 100 million units. Yes, Horizon Forbidden West came out to more users being able to access it than Spider-Man 2. And it still could not touch Helldivers 2. So once again, I really gotta go ahead and say, what is quality? If it's not something that is arbitrary and something that is as subjective as what kind of coffee a person likes. Talk to me in the comment section. Thanks for watching the video. Peace out.